Travel and Things in association with Sun Destinations, iconic destinations with amazing experiences, present In Conversation With. I am your host, David Batsoffen, and I'm joined by the original owner of Sandstone Estates, Wilfred and one of his right-hand people, Dave Richardson. And no, before you ask, not the Dave Richardson. This is a different Dave Richardson who helps Wilfred run Sandstone and has for almost 2 decades. Both of you, good morning, welcome, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Wilfred, Sandstone Estates, it's taken me a while to get there for a variety of reasons. And when I found myself in the area recently, and we were told that Sandstone was part of the journey, I was so excited, and I certainly was not disappointed. You're a very blessed man to have the largest train set in the entire world, I think, at your absolute disposal, and you can guard it with army vehicles, with oxen and all sorts of stuff. So take me through what it is, because specifically this, a herd of oxen, or what is it, 32 oxen pulling an ox wagon, was something I was not expecting to see.
Yes, I'd like to focus on the oxen because I think they're the heartbeat. Sorry, sorry, my bloody phone rang me. Sorry, that'll mess your recording up, David. Do you want to start again?
Don't worry about it. This is what
okay.
life is all about, Wilfred.
Yeah, so I just turned this thing off. Okay, so talking about the oxen, they are very much the heartbeat of Sandstone. We're a preservation center, and we really started with agricultural preservation in terms of saving mechanical relics of the past, and we've got a superb selection of agricultural machinery. But I realized that because of my interest in history, that for 300 years, human beings, and particularly the South Africans, were totally dependent on only one form of transportation, and that was oxen. And so I started to delve into the genetics of it and went back pre-Boer War to find out what had changed, and a lot had changed. In other words, the oxen that were employed on the Great Trek looked different to the oxen of today, the cattle of today. The modern beef farmer doesn't want to see horns. He doesn't want to see multicolor. And so it's been a wonderful journey for us to dig up the genetics that were prevalent in the 1800s and to recreate a span of oxen that would look identical to those oxen used by the Boers and by the British in the Boer War. They were working from old photographs. And we've reached a very good position where we have very strong genetics. We've got a big variety of animals, so we don't have any sort of inbreeding. And our dream is to create the largest single span of oxen ever inspanned anywhere in the world. And that happens to be 38 animals. We've got 34 at the moment, so we're not far off. You might say, well, why do you want to do that? Well, actually, in South Africa, in the very, very distant past, they had oxen that could haul up to 14-ton loads. And there's only one surviving wagon in South Africa that can carry 14 tons, and I happen to have it.
You just happen to have it, Will.
Well, I found it. It found me. And so probably as soon as Easter, we will do something special. We will load 14 tons of freight on a wagon, probably an old boiler or something heavy, and we'll put in probably 40 oxen to pull it. And, that's a milestone. It's a good exercise, and it brings some definition to what we're doing. In other words, we forget that South Africa had no manufacturing capability prior to the Anglo-Boer War. So if they wanted a boiler, for example, for a steam engine, they had to bring it from Britain. So it was shipped to a port. It was very heavy. It was pre-railways in the early days, so it had to be hauled by oxen. So these beasts of burden, we owe them a tremendous amount because they really laid the foundations of what is the modern South Africa.
Because I've seen cattle before, but these oxen fascinated me. Dave, how much are you involved with these particular beasts? Because they seem to be very difficult to work with. we were the last people to ride the ox wagon that day. And while they were outspanning them, the staff were battling with a couple of these beasts. They did not go easy into that dark night, so to speak.
Well, they're not something I get too involved with.
Mhm.
I know the nervousness of the people. Myself also. I'm not used to them. I'm not a farm boy, I must
Mm.
say. But we have a wonderful girl who works for us, Bianca van Rooyen, who looks after the oxen, and
Mm.
Wilfred can tell you is very instrumental in achieving what we've achieved.
Right.
They are cantankerous, I think, is a good word to be you can use.
Fair enough. Let's move on from things with four legs to things with single engine. I also didn't realize that there were going to be planes flying the weekend that we were there, Wilfred. But I've been told that this is regular. These are commercial pilots who, when they have nothing better to do, they come and fly at your place.
Yes, it's a wonderful background. There was a guy called Gavin Brown who was a wonderful. He died, unfortunately, of cancer a year or two back. But
Mhm.
he started a flying club in Springs and started to restore and collect vintage aircraft,
Right.
typical planes, Boeing Stearmans, Tiger Moths, that type of thing. And his one son, Steve, who's taken over control of the flight, was an Emirates pilot, and he had lots of friends who were pilots. And I think for pilots, this is an absolutely wonderful form of escapism because
Mm.
this is really flying. In other words, they're flying these seriously super sophisticated jets, which kind of know what they're doing. And they're
Yeah.
sitting there, just, watching the computer. And this is hands-on flying from an era before the era. So a lot
You're
of these
right.
aircraft, the 1930s. So the reason that it works so well between the flying club, and we have an exclusive arrangement with them, that they come down to every event, they decide on the type of aircraft. They have everything they need. They've got their own technicians. They've got their own pilots, and it is expanding quite rapidly. So they're bringing more and more aircraft every time. But remember, it is perfect flying weather. It's high altitude, stable, clear air,
Mm.
and no restrictions. Lovely grass airstrip, which is very similar to what these aircraft would always have been using back in the
Yeah.
old days. These are grass airstrip airplanes. And, they have complete control of the skies. We actually discourage modern aircraft coming to visit because, they've got to be sort of asked to kind of keep out the way. And it's a wonderful thrill for the public, firstly, just to see them, and they fly wonderful formations, etc., but also to have the opportunity to fly in them because they're licensed to carry passengers,
Mm.
obviously only one passenger. And there's tremendous demand. I mean, there's almost a queue of people saying this may be the only chance in my lifetime to fly not only in such a beautiful aircraft, but with such competent pilots over such a beautiful place.
Yeah.
And when I go up, I love them to go around the mountains because we own mountains here we've never actually looked at properly. So yeah, yeah. So I use it as a very powerful tool. I even do a crop survey with it
I'm
because
sure.
they fly. So it's just we forget that being in the air, everything you thought you knew about on the ground doesn't look the
You
same.
don't.
And
Yeah.
even our complex, which is quite big,
Mm.
I always sort of take a deep breath when I fly over it and thought, goodness gracious me, we've come a long way from one farmhouse and a sheep shed.
To what you have now. Dave, how difficult is it to market Sandstone Estates to the general public? I know that for steam enthusiasts, this is almost like going to, I don't know, to a holy grail. I have to nail my colors to the mast here, in as much as I started my apprenticeship on the old South African railways and harbors and spent time in Oh, New Bethesda, not New Bethesda. Uh, I knew I was going to do this to myself. It was the fourth largest train junction in South Africa, and I spent a year living in the town next door. And now, for the life of
Yeah.
no, around Craddock, Graaff-Reinet.
Rosmead?
No, past Rosmead. Why can I not remember that name now? It'll come to me in a moment. But we had steam enthusiasts coming from all over the world to come and see trains being restored and being outfitted. Um, is steam still a big deal for people, or is it now everybody just wants to hop on a plane and get to where they're going so quickly?
I think in South Africa, certainly there are a number of steam operators who are very successful, mainly in the Western Cape and one in Natal. We are only operational when we have an event.
Right.
And I think nowadays we perhaps attract less steam enthusiasts than we used to, primarily because we don't really cater 100% for them, in that we are rather leaning towards the general public, and also they enjoy a train ride. They're not, if I can be honest, sometimes they're not picky about the way things are put together.
Okay.
Some of the tours that we had one recently from Germany. There we had to be very particular in the type of wagons we used, the type of coaches we used, the locomotives. We recreate the past. We don't do that every single day, for example, on our recent cherry event or the next Easter event. We create an experience for the public. They could get hauled by a steam train. It's maybe not 100% correct in the coaches, for example, but they don't mind and they enjoy it. That's the main thing, that they enjoy it.
Wolf, what motorbike are we looking at here?
Okay, so that's a Russian World War II Ural motorbike, which is a direct copy of a BMW. The Russians were very cunning. They didn't bother to design anything. They just grabbed a German one and copied it, and it's very successful. It was brand new when I got it. I got it from Polish ex-army stock. It was brand new. It's never been used. It's clever because it's got a drive shaft to the other wheel on the outside of the thing. So it's a very good off-road bike because it's kind of like the four-wheel drive motorbike. It's significant because it's military and it's part of our collection. And we have a philosophy that we only collect military vehicles of relevance to South Africa. For example, this would have, so we collect South African operated vehicles World War II. So as long as the South African troops were using them in World War II, we like them. We will very keen on South African manufactured vehicles, of which we've got many famous ones like the Ratel, the Casper, the Eland, etc. And finally, we love to collect stuff that the South Africans captured in war. In other words, so this would have been captured in Angola. This one not particularly, because I got it from Poland. But we've got a few items which were things. So as long as there's a South African connection, but we're not blindly copying military stuff for the sake of it, because if we did, we'd have 10,000 military vehicles.
I was going to say you'd end up in competition with what used to be called the War Museum in Johannesburg.
Well, not really. The War Museum in Joburg is also very good. They are exactly like, they're theme relevant. It has to have some connection. We're different because the essence of sandstone is operational ability. In other words, we don't want to be seen as a sort of a graveyard, a static place. We love stuff to work. We spend our entire lives getting stuff to work. And these shows are wonderful because many times people will see for the first time something that may have been under restoration for 3 or 4 years.
Now, from iron horses to wild horses, the people that were on this train ride with us that afternoon were fascinated by these stallions, or this herd of horses that came rocketing across the plains. Because what people can't see in this image is directly above these horses, there are aircraft. And I'm taking this picture from the carriage of a train that was taking us on the last ride of the afternoon, which was fabulous. It really was.
Yeah, so we've got a very large piece of real estate. We've got like 10,000 hectares. 50% of it is mountain and wild spaces. It's very fine arable ground, some of the best in in the country. So we grow crops on the flat areas. This is a land that's fallow. In other words, it would normally have a crop in it, but it's resting. And we are in a wild part of the country. We will wake up one morning and find that there's animals that have strayed from Lesotho, etc. These particular animals belong to one of our African joint venture partners. We're in business with about a dozen black farmers who basically are renting grazing areas. In other words, land that's not feasible for arable crops. It works very well, and they provide a wonderful service to us because they're very protective of the environment. So, in the old days, instead of having guys driving around night and day in bakkies looking for intruders, we don't bother anymore. Our African joint venture farmers protect their areas. And I just followed up on these horses, and they belong to a guy called Pakiso, who is in that area. In theory, the horses were actually off limits, but because the field was in fallow, we didn't mind. And we'd simply say to him, we're going to plant a crop there. Can you please keep your horses somewhere else? So I saw them myself, and I was absolutely gobsmacked. I loved it because I didn't know they existed. And it was the
you and I were there on the same day. It turned out in retrospect that you and I were there on the same day. I just didn't know it at the time. But you'd met our tour leader.
I did.
Dave, do you have a favorite on Sandstone? A favorite item, a favorite, I don't know, implement that when you go and visit there, that's the first stop you make to go and pay your respects to whatever it is?
Well, my passion would have to be the railway, because that was my introduction to Sandstone.
Right.
In about 1990, about 1999, 2000. I'd met Wilfred in 1997 when he bought the first steam locomotive that Sandstone owned, which is still at the farm. Plinth, it was for the main line. That's another story. But the railway is my passion, and it's developed with me over the years. It's grown. I love all of it. I'm more a fan of the big engines than the small engines.
Have you ever been in one of the planes?
One of these, as we see on the screen? No. I'm very much a man on the ground. Aeroplanes to me are British Airways. They're big and silver or white.
You like
I'm
me.
not too good in the small ones.
You like me. You like terra firma, and the firmer it is, the less the terror.
One gets that feeling in a train, I have to say.
Yeah. Look, when I did my national service, it was in Port Elizabeth, which was my hometown, and 6th Squadron was right next door us, which were Harvards. And I have a passion. I was hoping there was going to be a Harvard flying that particular day, and there wasn't. Some of us got to fly in Harvards. My lieutenant threw up in the cockpit and then asked somebody else to clean it. And they said, nope, the rule is, and you knew when you got into this plane, if you throw up, you clean up. He wasn't too happy, and his rank held no sway that particular day.
Well, we used to have the Harvard Club visit us, but I think they, as far as I can understand, are not in such a good financial position anymore and battle to actually get their planes around. But they were major visitors some years ago.
Okay.
Dave, Steve Brown says he'll have a Harvard at Easter. They are planning one.
Now this particular bus, I had visions of Terence Stamp standing on the top of this bus as we went for a ride and doing his whole Priscilla Queen of the Desert thing. But although this bus may be similar, it's not the same. Is there a backstory to this as we wind down our chat, guys?
Yeah, so the name of this bus we called the Bambazonki Special. It was a bus, 1950s. It was a long distance bus, and its job in its working days was to travel between Johannesburg and Lusaka in Zambia. Right. And it continued to do that for a very, very long time. When it was retired, I managed to acquire it, and we just thought that it was such a iconic item. Firstly, in terms of a solid example of British engineering, it's a Leyland. It's done probably 1 million miles in its lifetime, and it was in pretty good condition. And so it's just a good example of an item that is very appropriate to us, because it works quite hard, that bus. As Dave mentioned, a German photographic tour, they don't want to ride on the train, they want to photograph the train, but they've got to get from place A to place B. So we're different. We won't allow a modern bus on the farm except to be parked. So, we say to the Germans, you either go in our Bambazonki special or you don't go. And what's interesting about that is the leader of the tour group, he said, we do not want anything to disturb the view. What do you mean? We don't want oxen. We don't want steam engines. We don't want military vehicles. So I said, well, look, we'll definitely take the military vehicles out, because that'll just remind you of the war. But
well done, Wilfred.
We're not going to abide by the law. And he came back afterwards and said, my clients were so fascinated by the oxen and other items. This is a 1929 safari wagon, only one of its kind in the world, totally original. So the fact is that I think Sandstone, David will tell you that he's been to hundreds of heritage railways, so have I, and they're quite sterile, because all you see is the train.
Yeah.
And when you're on the train, if you're in Britain, you probably looking at a big industrial estate going past or something like that, but a countryside. We work on the basis that everybody on the train has got lots to see, because he can't actually see himself on the train. And I think that's a very good example. We'll arrange with the pilots to do a formation fly past at Wille, where you would have stopped on your trip to turn around. I think with I was on the train before that did have a fly past, and I think the train you were on was a special. But the essence of Sandstone is diversity. Is a snapshot of a world that's long gone, and that would involve oxen, steam engines, old cars, old trucks, old buses, military vehicles, just about anything. The only and in our case, lots of old people to add to the picture.
Well segued, Wilfred, and belated happy birthday. I believe it was a big one for you just recently. So now you can be the super oom. Dave, do you have a bit of catching up to do then?
Not far to go. 3 years.
Okay.
And I'll be celebrating the same one. I'm quite scared of it all. It seems to go here very quickly, but I'm still feeling good about life.
Great.
So it doesn't worry me.
This fellow caught my attention. I think if I was to put Sandstone into one photograph, the people that work there, that help out, this guy would be the epitome of the person that I saw, hands dirty, face full of coal dust, and just having, for want of better words, a bloody good time.
Yeah. If I may comment, this is Sean Spahn. He is a very good example of how you describe things. He's been visiting us since a youngster. He's now married with a child. He is very versatile. His first passion was road steam, which is very rare in South Africa. These are road traction engines, steam engines, which you probably saw. And he got very familiar with that. He's a very clever guy. Sean's one of those guys, you can put him in front of any piece of machinery, and within half an hour he's figured it out. Anyway, he enjoyed that, but he took a fancy to steam engines, and he basically is now qualified steam driver and fireman. But he's very helpful. If I say to him, I'm a bit understaffed, Sean, in any category on that farm, he'll go along and don't worry, I'll help out. So I wish I had 20 of him, because I could do so much.
Just in wrapping up, guys, and thank you so much for this. I mean, we could have continued to chat for the longest time. And I suppose I should point this question in your direction, Dave, seeing you do the marketing. How do people find out about Sandstone? Website details as we wrap up?
have got a website. Yes, it's www.sandstone-estates.com.
Estates
But
with
it's
an S. They mustn't forget the S.
yes,
Yeah.
but it's easily found on the internet. We have a Facebook page which is very, very successful.
Hmm.
Hits a much broader audience than the website.
Right.
And of course, we have a very large mailing list, both internationally and local. We have lost a few visitors over the last few years, primarily with COVID and some problems also in the area with the state of the roads,
Yeah,
which are
tell me about it.
now been repaired and
Yeah.
are, bar one small section, virtually back to, if we can call it, normal.
Mm.
But we have a core, I think, of repeat visitors endlessly.
That's great.
Perhaps older, a slightly older age group, apart from the kids that come with their parents. But that's the nature of the beast, I think, as what they will see.
Mm.
But it's we we broaden our base every time. We don't get as many international visitors. It's a cost to come to
Yeah.
South Africa. And we have looked at, we used to run very long 2-week events, which we would attract 3,000-4,000 people,
Mm.
including huge overseas contingent. Sadly, that's just not become economic for us. I think
I'm
Wilfred
going
could
to have
maybe
to stop you there.
comment on that.
We're about,
Comment on that.
we're about out of time. And I do want to say thank you before I say goodbye. So, Wilfred, to you, I wish you continued success with Sandstone. I know that your children have now taken over, and I wish them continuing success. Dave, your upcoming big birthday, I hope you see it with health and with
Well, that's
fortitude.
a while away yet.
Oh, well, all right. Well, when it happens, unless I see you before then. And to both of you, thank you so much for joining me on In Conversation With. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. And we're available to supply any further information. It's a big and broad subject you're dealing with here.
Thank you so very much. We will no doubt be in touch again. From yours truly, David Batshoff, and until the next time, bye for now.